things which are also evolving as the regulatory is also evolving on the valuation front. Like we saw earlier, the other Vodafone and the Shell case for the transfer pricing. So we need to be aware of all this. Now, apart from these being the general purposes for valuation, I think this is a key slide where in an M&A where the valuation is required. And this will tell us the importance of valuation in each step of deal making. Right from screening a target, looking at whether these targets will make sense to me, whether I can buy them, do they fit into my strategy? So that's the entry level valuations. Second is, if you're looking for start to the next level of diligence valuations, can I look at them? What are the valuations? What is the pre-deal PPA? Because ultimately in India, if it's gonna tomorrow hit me by way of EPS earnings adjustments, my main business is going to take a hit. So my EPS, so pre-deal PPA is also an important part. Post the diligence, I fine-tune the final fair valuation because I did an MOU or a term sheet with a draft or a range of numbers which are subject to closing adjustments or due diligence adjustments. So I need to fine-tune and come to the final numbers. Again, the valuation is required at that point of time. People can do it, companies do it internally as well, and can get depending on the type of transaction and the involvement of the professionals there. Subsequent to the transaction consummating, assuming that it consummates, there also, how do we want to? Do we want to keep that business integrated, merge it, keep it separate? All that would also, if the company tomorrow decides to merge it or is a slump sale and you're getting into it, obviously there is a valuation from an accounting requirement as well. And an actual PPA is also required to record the intangibles, the fair values of the fixed assets. As part of the deal, if there is a requirement from the lenders that you need to get a formal valuation done for the investment committee. Fair? At that point of time also one needs to do this exercise. And after you acquired, let's assume you are a private equity and you want to exit 5 years, 7 years down the line. Again the same round, you need to evaluate at what price you can sell. So the line important here is valuation as an exercise, whether it's done externally or internally, is an integral part of a deal. Whether you plan to sell, whether you plan to acquire, and you want to do a joint venture, it's important. Now the third part of it, issues. Issues, typically we will try and look at it in terms of what specs are we coming from on a conceptual basis. Am I looking from a buyer's perspective or am I looking from a seller's perspective? Or are we talking about somebody third wanting to come into the country and he would completely look at differently? If Coke wanted to enter into India after so many years, the only way they could have entered this and make an impact is by acquiring Coke. So they paid a premium. Somebody wanted to stop private guys from coming into and doing petroleum products retailing. So what somebody did, IOC paid a huge bomb for acquiring IBP so that they could keep away Reliance and shares of the country and assert of the country from retailing business for almost a decade and plus. There are so many examples where people have done evaluations, people have paid money for entry strategy, blocking competition. So are we talking about the valuation for financial reporting purposes? Are we talking about valuation in the hands of the existing guy or the way somebody else wants to look at it? Because we have a larger picture of how to do it. Even I think there was a very old classic deal of Sibata and Binata, the two Russian institutions, with the same strategy, killing competition, increasing your price and recovering the purchase consideration. So those are the things, so conceptually were very important, which a lot of people miss. Obviously, if I'm a seller, I'm more passionate about my business. So I'll always think the best about me and that I should get the best value. On the other side, somebody wants to maximize his gain by limiting the outflow of cash as a buyer. So obviously, he will try and find all the false diligence issues, that it's not the best for the business. But again, it depends. What's the scarce? Is it a scarce commodity? Is it the only asset which is, or is it a licensed asset which nobody else has it? Then I have to pay premiums for that. So synergy, who's buying it, from whose perspective you're looking at, that plays an important role in valuation. In any M&A deal, now going into a little detail, in any M&A deal, there must be reasons why we are looking at an acquisition. Either it's the people, are we talking about IT companies, are we talking about some pharma company, are we talking about some R&D company, or are we talking about some hotel, which is an asset-driven business, manufacturing something. These are the key value drivers, or some intangible. I'm planning to acquire a mining company because it has a license, or a power company which has a 10-year, 20-year PPA with the government, so I'm assured revenue. So what is the purpose for which I want to acquire now? That's the key. You need to secure that and ensure that in your deal, are we ring fencing that? Else, by the time the deal, typically a deal takes a lot of time, it requires a lot of patience and creativity from all the sides. So you lose the sight of why you started the objective of looking at this company. Are you properly ring fencing it? Are you doing the right things in this? Very quickly. More detail into, okay, I have identified the business, I have identified why I want to do it. Then a little more detailing into it. And that's where our part would come in is, are we securing this? Are we understanding whether the business has a good quality? Can we run this business? There are certain businesses which can run private, which cannot be run by MNCs, which cannot be run by large business houses. There are certain businesses which only unorganized players can run. If you get to acquire that, will you be able to ensure that your revenues and profits will be intact? Image, competition, some of them, they get integrity due diligence done, background check done on the promoters and the key guys. If they find any issue, they may not want to get connected with those companies. Competition, market share, do we have a reasonable market share to acquire this? Customer relationship, production cost, costing part of it. So all that qualitative factors get into what you call as the financial drivers. That's where Bhavesh Bhai's commercial angle comes in. All these qualitative factors needs to then travel to financial value drivers, which all funnels up to what you want to pay for it, or what is the value that you have. What is the value that you think for a given business or a given asset? It's qualitative factors, it's financial factors, all put together. A little detailing, I know it's a little busy slide, but the idea is, irrespective of the industry, or in all industries, there would always be companies which are matured enough, there are companies which are starting up. You can still have a telecom company which is the highest invested startup starting in the last 6 months, versus something which was an industry which started in 1996. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about a company which has just started, or the industry is evolving? Then you will have a little nuances or how to evaluate that. You may have to look at, you won't get past results. You may not get best of the comparable company. Or maybe you won't get it in India. So in 96, when the telecom industry started in India, China was 5-10 years ahead of us. So if we were to do a valuation then, we would have to look at foreign countries, and that too in countries which have recently been ahead of us in the curve, and look at how the business has evolved, how the consolidation has taken place, what deals and deal multiples have come up. So we have to borrow from that. In some cases, they're fast moving. So 10 years, 20 years back, IT companies, very fast moving. Now already they are on a larger base, so they find it difficult to grow on that. But earlier, so then it used to be how best comparable company you can get. Today, if I start a company as in my name and for an IT, obviously I cannot enjoy the multiples that Infosys enjoys today, even today. Forget 5 years, 10 years back when they were growing and growth is an important factor for multiple. I will still not get it. I would really struggle in the initial phases, come up to a certain level, and then only I will get the best of the multiple. Again. Two, there are certain companies which are typically in the high growth stage. Fourth is some of them are mature. Like if you start with an IT company now, in my example, 5 years down the line, I may be in the high growth phase. By that time, TCS and Wipros of the world would have gone to a mature level of business. Some of the industries have seen the peak. Now they are at a level where the growths are not going to happen. So there are specific ways of looking at things for each of these type of companies. Your methods of valuation remain the same, but what you need to look at. If it's a company which has seen the peak, its assets would maybe derive a better value, or its earnings are so flat, you can take it as a recurring to your fixed deposit return or something you have a contract with. High growth companies, you need to take multiples of those high growth companies. Whether in India, whether abroad, use their multiples and apply that. So this is the way one would have to look at valuation. Just focusing on key source of values for that. For a startup, it could be entirely future growth. For rapid expansion, lot of it from future. And for mature, it would be more from the existing profitabilities and assets. Again, we are not discussing on the different methods of valuation. These are from where the value will come out for any M&A for you to look at. Now we get into the smaller issues of evaluation. Typically, availability of information in a company where you don't have much of a background, or the industry is evolving, company is just starting, past results not available, unorganized sector, or the way you don't get industry reports. There are so many industries like this, which are completely not in the mainstream. Sustainability of the business model. How do we factor it? Can we test whether after acquisition of a particular business, will I be able to run the business in a manner that's running? Because I'm going to pay a multiple of that, or I'm going to evaluate on that basis. So when I look at it, I need to do scenario analysis. Will I lose 10-20% of the business, or the profitability will go down because my standards or my way of looking at cost is completely different. In my charter, I may not be allowed to do certain businesses. Scalability. When I'm doing evaluation, can I replicate this business which I'm doing in Maharashtra to India, or what I'm doing in India to some other emerging markets? If not, then probably we cannot take those multiples, or we need to look at it differently. Profitability of the core business. Many times when we look at the financial statements and we feel happy, wow, the company is making profits. But when you go a little into it deeper down and you do some analysis, you come to know the earnings from the other business, other than the core businesses, could be more. The core business may not be making the profit as we think about it. So that's where lies an important thing is about how we evaluate it and apply and ring fence our core business profits. Issues in forecasting. Prior to that, what also important is we are seeing a industry cycle or a price cycle for various commodities, oil, metals. So at what point of time are we doing the valuation? Are we doing it at a peak when the oil is at a 147 or it is at 35? Do you think that will that 35 remain as it is, or are we looking at a long-term average of, let's say, 65, 70, whatever the analysts are? There's a lot of yarn on this available. But that's the way one will have to evaluate. What's immediate? You may be in the peak or a curve, but that may not be the best way of evaluating it for a long-term basis. Issues in forecasting. A lot of issues in forecasting. One of them, as we discussed, is the oil price or metals price. What's the long-term sustainable? Will I be able to project beyond 5 years? Could be carved out as a conjectural exercise. But even for a 5 year, do I have the basic economics data, all other industry data, what the competition and the peer group is doing, or I am doing only a budgeting exercise which is all internal to me and not getting affected? I need to be aware of the market. Am I building in adequate capex for which the valuation or the projected results are expected. Or if I expect to double the volumes, but am I doing the capex adequate enough to double the volumes? So there are so many of such important points which needs to be kept in mind, which come as an issue. But we call it as not only issues, we'll say it as a challenge as well, which can be navigated, which can be managed, which can be looked into, and which can be mitigated. Again, valuation of a startup company is very difficult. You never get a best benchmark, or best benchmark is not in your geography. Or third, even if Flipkart has Snapdeal as the best competition or Amazon, the other companies are not listed. You may not be able to derive a multiple together. The details are not available. So there are so many challenges which come in our valuation. The way you can put it is, like a business, it always has a volatile time. There's always uncertainty built into it. There's ambiguity. There's no clarity, straight. There's no business which is straight. Even in a power business which has a 20-year long-term PPA, people are seeing so many dramatic changes happening there. So whatever happens in the business, the valuation exercise should also capture that or try to capture that. We can't be the best businessman, but we can try to capture that. That's the important part. After looking at the information at a company level and all these details, I think the next step comes is selection of the company methods, which is very crucial. You have the DCF, you have the income approach, you have the transaction multiples, you have the market approach. Even for a listed company, you have a market price, which is very trading. But when you go to a promoter and ask him, will you sell at that price? No. He'll always have something else differently to say that no, this is different. So for what purpose are we? If you're doing a valuation of a listed company only for ESOP purposes, the valuation is different. If you're selling it for the promoter to sell it entire stake, it's completely different. The approach is different, the methods are different. You don't do a DCF or an ESOP. You do it a different way. Difficulty in obtaining comparable companies, like we talked about Flipkart and Snapdeal or Amazon. They are the best competition among themselves. But you cannot, because they are not listed, you cannot borrow their multiples, you cannot derive their multiples. Earlier, when TCS was not listed, only Infosys and Wipro used to be listed, it was easier that there are two companies of that size, that scale, that you are coming from that pedigree of a large business house in India, you borrow their multiples, you apply. But prior to that, no. When Bharti got listed, that was the first telecom company that got listed. Prior to that, there was none in India whose multiples could be borrowed or whose growth potential or things could be looked at. So these are the things, whether you are able to get the right comparison or right transaction. When Grasim and the Birlas Group got the cement business from L&T, that multiple, can we look at it when Holcim got ACC and Ambuja? Those could be different. Times were completely different, the underlying costings were different, it was a 5-year gap. Though both are large players, can we still look at it? Or we may have to look at international benchmarks which have just recently happened, let's say Lafarge Holcim, to look at if this makes sense. So there are these nuances or these subtleties which need to be kept in mind. Continuous, what you call as confusion, which keeps on happening in deals, pre-money, post-money valuation, how one is looking at it. Are we selling the business on a cash and debt-free basis, or are we selling it along with the entire liabilities, or are we transferring all the cash or not? So that definition is also very important. Discount rate. People also mix discount rate or the weighted average cost of capital with the hurdle rate, with what they expect. Yes, they both are somewhere connected, but that's not exactly the same. So we need to think about it, whether it should be. And what is the company-specific risk premium that needs to be built into it? You have a formula from a capital asset pricing model, which can give us what's the discount rate that needs to be built up for a particular industry. But after that, the pluses, the minuses, the dissimilarities between the subject company and the companies that you're talking about, how do we fill it? That's the important, or that's the way a valuer, basis and experience, would try to find out whether it's illiquidity that needs to be done, whether it's the client concentration, whether I have a natural limitation. The market could be growing by 20%, but I have a natural limitation. I have a plant capacity which is full. Should I be looking at all of that? Again, when you borrow multiples from companies which are abroad, comparable, when I said in 96, when we started the telecom, we had to look at companies which are in China, in Brazil, and somewhere else. Can we simply borrow those benchmark multiples, or we need to adjust them for the country, our country, compared to what China was? Still, insurance currently is also like that. We hardly have any insurance, pure play insurance company which is listed. When you go to China, you will find 3 of them, US will find 10 of them. Can we take it? The whole economics in the country versus what is there in US or China are different. We need to look at those differences. Even the risk-free rates, some of the countries are virtually zero, while we are talking about 6.5 to 7.5. So how do we look at those valuations? One other element which comes as an additional point apart from all that we do is sometimes we have to rely on a third party report as well. If you're doing a complete valuation, there could be a fixed asset valuation, there could be what you call as in insurance you have other type of a valuation which gets added or which gets referred in the valuation. Are we technical? Do we have the capability to look into it? Or we have to outsource it to some expert who can bring the best out of it. So these are also one needs to keep in mind. After the 2 slides on the companies and the importance on how the issues or typical challenges which come in, is it a deal structure? When you do a valuation, you need to be mindful about a deal structure. Are we doing a plain vanilla merger? Are we doing a demerger? Like the Reliance thing, or are we doing a merger, simple merger like 2 companies coming together, or are we doing complex like the Aditya Birla and Grasim, where the financial services getting listed separately, or something like what Wipro did a few years back, where they hived off the non-IT business into an unlisted company and gave multiple offers and options to the shareholders, whether they want to take cash, immediate cash, they want to take preference shares, or they want to go back to the IT company's shares. So multiple options were given. So depending on whether you're doing a merger, demerger, slump sale, are you transferring only intangibles, what type of, are we ready for the valuation will depend on that. The valuation exercise needs to take that into account. What's the salient feature of the scheme? Some of the sectors in the country are still emerging. Education, healthcare. It's still, a lot of it is in the private domain or in the trust. So how do we structure a deal or how do we do a valuation of this? That's another one. Funding structure. Is it a leverage buyout? Is it INR funds? Is it forex requirements? Whatever it is, depending on that, your valuation will look different. It's not going to be completely different, but the final specs have to be looked at it to that effect. Again, we have multiple regulatory authorities, right from RBI to tax and others, who look at valuation differently, and SEBI. While SEBI would look at it based on the takeover code or preferential allotment, tax would look at it in the section 56, whether it's a book value. Now they've been highlighting the data about book value. Only somewhere in one of the sections they will say maximum is the DCF. And there's a third sub-proviso which says you can do a fair value, but you need to justify a lot to the tax officer. So these 3 regulators or the government departments, they are not talking to each other as far as the definition of fair market value is concerned or which methods have been prescribed. Like earlier RBI used to say only DCF as a method. Now they've come back to say, okay, after 3-4 years they've come back to a fair market value internationally accepted and left it to the judgment of the valuer. Income tax is still predominantly DCF and other things, even transfer pricing authority. While evaluating the business, if you are from a buyer side, you need to evaluate it keeping in mind what synergy does this bring into me. Can I give a value or a price more than what the fair value is, because unless until I